let's talk a little bit about the quarterback because there's been some interesting developments on the quarterback story.
Yeah.
Jess Flynn, a doctor, went on with Marty Morningweg, and she said when Brock comes back, studies show that that he should expect a similar level of play compared to before the injury. And this was a conversation they had a couple days ago on a podcast. I'm now reading Matt Mayoko, and we're all kind of gearing up for this big quarterback competition, and it sounds like it's going to be over before it even begins. Mayoko for NBC Sports wrote today that there's not going to be much of a quarterback competition. Now, here's what he wrote. He says, realistically, if Brock Purdy is ready to play football when the season rolls around, it will be his job. If his road to a full recovery stays true to a 12-week time frame, he would receive full medical clearance to play football around August 21st, about 3 weeks before the start of the 2023 season. There virtually will be no way one of the other quarterbacks will be able to take the job away from Purdy based solely on practices. Why? Because Purdy has already shown in games, what his value is to the team. So Mayoko goes on to write, Lance has a stronger arm and provides more of a threat than Purdy. Darnold stands out on the practice field for his unique throwing ability. But what Purdy proved to everyone involved with the 49ers is that he has the physical skills to succeed in the NFL while also possessing many intangible factors that do not necessarily show up during practice sessions. All right. Well, I mean, that is interesting. I mean, if you can take this at face value, and Purdy's cleared to play, third week in August, that's going to give him 3 weeks to prepare for the opener. I mean, what do the Niners do here? I mean, literally, what do the Niners do from the standpoint of you've got Trey Lance sitting there? All he has said is that I just want a chance to compete. You've kind of buffered the position with depth by bringing in Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen. So now you have options. Should the 49ers trade Lance before before there's even this competition? I mean, is that realistic? Are they going to endure? Are they going to go through a competition, but it's not really going to be a competition, and just have him there as an insurance policy? I know Trey, every time he's asked about it, says, I want to be here. But if he's not even going to, but he's also maintained, I just want a chance to compete. If he's not really going to be given a chance to compete, what's in the Niners' best interest here? If he loses out to Sam Darnold for the number 2 job, whatever trade value he does have, I think has got to go by the wayside. And at the same time, is it fair to Trey to just hold him off as an insurance policy off to the side saying, well, we're not going to play you, but we're not going to trade you either. And we're just going to keep you in this forever limbo and waste a good portion of his 20s. I mean, do the Niners owe it to Lance to move him if they're not going to allow him to compete for the starting job? I mean, there's a lot here because there's a lot of people who are just so – there's a lot. It's easy to defer to the depth. Oh, they used a bunch of quarterbacks last year. They need to keep Trey around for depth. But if they're not really going to give him a chance to start and they feel like they want to go with Brock Purdy and you've got Darnold and Allen there, is it fair to Trey to just say, you know what, you're not really going to get a chance to start, but you're really not going to get a chance to go elsewhere either? I mean, how do you think John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Adam Peters, the organization, how are they going to play their hand here?
Yeah, it's a tough situation. And again, I don't think anything has necessarily changed with when Mayoko reported this today. This is pretty much what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been saying this whole time, right? They said, as long as he has no setbacks, we expect him to be starter week 1. And that's the vibe. And Mayoko wrote to that's the vibe in the clubhouse, that he's the guy. It's his job to lose. It's basically reiterating the facts. But the point of the whole matter is today that he hasn't had any setbacks. He started to throw. Everything's still on tack. And he's still on pace to be ready for the start of the season, just like they predicted. So it looks like, yeah, Brock Purdy's going to come in and be the starter, which they wanted. But then you ask the question of, okay, what the heck is Trey Lance doing? Like, what are they going to do to this guy? Is it fair to him? I feel bad, but at the same time, the injuries piled up on him, unfortunately, so he is behind. And I think last year, what Brock Purdy did, it was like, wow, They fell in love with him. That's their guy. He won games, and like we said earlier, is they kind of need to go all in. This is a chance. They know that they could. They know what to expect with Brock Purdy. They know they can win games. Obviously, in practice, he's not going to wow anybody, like you said. But in the games, you saw how many times he, stretched plays with his, abilities on the field with running and just being able to make the checkdowns and extend so many. He extended so many plays, and that's what they want in this offense, right? Like it's one thing to drop it off to Kittle or Debo. They're going to get 5 yards and turn it into 80 yards with CMC, obviously. But Brock Purdy did have that ability to take a bad play and make it a positive play. So they like what they saw, and it looks like he's healing. That's their guy. They're telling us that's their guy. It's unfortunate for Trey. Does he deserve a chance to play somewhere? Absolutely. Does he deserve a chance to compete? Absolutely. Should they keep him as a backup plan? Absolutely. All those questions you can say yes to. It sounds like it's greedy, but the 49ers, like you said, it's easy to go to that route. But it was something last year that they're like, man, if we had a better third string quarterback, we might be in a better position. And you don't want to sit there and think that any of these guys would get, hurt. And if they did get rid of Trey Lance, the question is, what is his value? We don't even know what he's worth, Larry. Like, I don't know what he's worth right now. And there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, you take him and trade him now while he's at his peak value. Well, what is his peak value? I don't know. And again, I think if they were to have Sam Darnold as their backup quarterback, they'd be content. I think he's a decent veteran. I think he can come in and manage the game and win games with this offense. And I think they've seen that, on the practice field. So I know a lot of people aren't excited about Sam Darnold, but he can throw the ball and execute the system that Kyle Shanahan needs again. So it's a tough position. Do I think that they're going to trade Trey Lance? I don't. I think there's going to be a lot of reports that are going to stem from this today that people are going to say they're going to trade him. There's going to be a lot of rumors because it's, again, 3-4 weeks in the next couple of weeks where there's nothing until training camp starts. So there will be a lot of reports, a lot of rumors, or people maybe trading for Trey Lance. I think ultimately they're going to let Trey come in to training camp and see what the hell he has because I think they owe it to him to see if he can bridge that gap. And maybe he comes in and yeah, okay, Brock Purdy, he may be ready by week 1, whatever. But if Trey Lance looks like he has so much zip and he has so much poise, maybe they're going to say, hey, look, we'll let you start actually. And he can bridge the gap, but I don't think he's going to do enough. If they're that much set on Brock Purdy, that's their guy. But I think that what Trey's saying, in terms of he deserves that opportunity, he deserves that chance. I think he will get it in the preseason. I think he's going to have to go out there in the preseason and knock their socks out. But again, if they were to trade him, like, I don't even know what his value is. What do you think his value is?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, obviously it's not what they paid for him. Yeah. So there, and I have no idea. I mean, we assume here that other teams want him, but maybe nobody wants him. I don't know. I really don't know. If you're in a win now mode, I don't think you want him. I think you would want him more if you were, as a future possibility. Like, maybe Minnesota might want him, or maybe Green Bay might want him as like a down the road, hedging against Cousins, hedging against Love, hedging again. Maybe the Commanders want him. I mean, if I'm the 49ers, I don't want to move Trey Lance unless I'm getting something that helps me win the Super Bowl this year. Like if the Commanders called and they're offering Montez Sweat and a conditional pick, I would do that because I think Montez Sweat could get you over the top this year. And if you win the Super Bowl, I think that changes so much about things for everybody, for Kyle, for John, for Jed, for Parag, for the players. I mean, they're in their window. And, maybe you could argue they were ahead of the schedule with the Kansas City in 2019 with Kansas City Super Bowl, but they're no longer ahead of schedule. If now they're trying to get this done before they have to break up this course. So I don't know. I don't know what he's worth. All I would say is I wouldn't give him away. No. I'd rather have him sit there. I know it may not be in his best interest to sit, but I think I owe it to my fans to either have another option at quarterback that's viable, or to trade him for something that I think gets me over the top as a Super Bowl contender. If you added a Montez Sweat type edge rusher, that maybe is the piece that gets you over the top. But yeah, I mean, they're in a very weird situation. I'll tell you what I'm not comfortable with. I'm not comfortable just using Trey as a security blanket or a backup fallback plan and driving his entire career all the way through to the end, where he becomes a free agent and walks away for nothing. To me, you can't really say you're doing right by your players if you don't really give them an opportunity to play and then you don't move him on and he's just there. But it seems to me that when guys have, like last year, they traded for Christian McCaffrey, they had Jeff Wilson. You could argue that, hey, when you run out of running backs, you're cooked, and you always want to have as many running backs as possible. But Jeff Wilson saw the handwriting on the wall and said, trade me.
Yeah.
And they said, fine, we'll trade you. And they sent him to Miami. It was a very good situation. He was a free agent at the end of the year. He re-signed with the Dolphins in the offseason. And in that way, they were very player friendly. Trey's now not making that demand. He's not saying trade me. He's saying I want to be here. But he's also saying I just want a chance to compete. And if they're not going to give him that chance to compete because they're decided on Brock, that's totally their prerogative. I don't see anything evil about that approach. But then move him on and get what you can get and get down the road. And I think that's probably what they're going to do when I see that they've buffered the whole quarterback room with 2 more veterans. But we don't know. And then every time there's been an opportunity for any of their representatives, whether it be John or Kyle or this week we had a chance to talk to Brian Greasy, they hang real close to, the compliments they throw towards Trey are usually about his work ethic, his character, but it's never about his motion. It's never about his play action fakes. It's never about his pocket presence. It's never seemingly about his football. It's always things that, so it's like you wonder, how do they feel about him as a football player? And how do they evaluate him as a football player beyond his work ethic, beyond his character? I think we all know at this point that everybody thinks that Trey's got high character and a great work ethic. So stop saying it. And as when you're asked about him, and either tell us what you like about him as a player, or if you don't like him as a player, maybe this is the time to move him on. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. But the other thing I think is that has to be stated here is I think this quarterback competition only works if it's a clear winner. If it's murky and it's like, well, Darnold looked the best in the preseason. Trey looked the best in the practices. Brock was, the guy who looked good in the regular season and in the playoffs last year. If we never can ever, if it's just shades of gray, you know what I mean? If it's really like, well, these players may think that quarterback looks the best, and this group of players may think this quarterback looks the best. And maybe there's a coach who says something, or a coordinator, or a player. Are we going to sit there and, this guy said this and that guy said that? And, it seems like it could get really, it could be a divisive thing from within, not, through anybody's intention, just through circumstance. If there's not a clear winner, like if Brock takes over as a starter and he's clearly the best quarterback and he's playing at a really high level, and Trey doesn't play particularly well in the preseason, and Darnold continues to turn it over in the preseason, and Brandon Allen is very, very much beneath the group, then it works. But what if Trey outplays Brock in the preseason? What if Darnold outplays everybody in the preseason? Are we going to then? Who's the week 1 starter? Is it based on the preseason? Well, you know what? Darnold looked the best, or Trey looked the best, but then, or is it about, Brock went 5-0 in the regular season, really 6-0, with a 107.3 passer rating in the regular season, and he wins the job based on those stats. I mean, you see what I'm saying? It becomes a very debatable thing, and maybe even a borderline divisive thing.
Yeah, it could become murky. If you look at it from that lens, it could be very murky. It could be very dirty. It could be something where it's like there's a lot of drama. There's different sides pulling here, coaches, players. But honestly, and I think this is why I'm not too surprised of all the news that's been coming out lately because I feel like Kyle and Lynch and even Mayoko today with his report, it's pretty much been the status quo of, well, if Brock Purdy's healthy, he's a start. And I don't think it has to do with anything of how he plays this preseason, of how he's because obviously he's rehabbing. He may not be, thrown with the same zip coming out of, coming into training camp. It may not be because he's still coming into, a season where he's recovering from an injury. But I think if they feel he's 100% ready, he has no setbacks, and he's cleared, that's what they're hoping for. That's their quarterback. That's their QB1. And I think they're going to keep saying that so there is no drama. So we can't pin it on, oh, well, Trey looked great. Well, that's great if Trey looked great. That's great if Sam Darnold looked good. It's good for them because they need to prove to Kyle and Lynch that they can manage this team. Because if something does show up where Brock's not ready to go, they're banking on Brock Purdy being ready to be cleared on August 21st. That was the day, 3 weeks before the start of the season, like you said, and he can be ready for week 1. If that's not the case, and they feel like it's a rush on him, like they don't want to rush him back, then one of those other two guys, whoever does the best, will be that guy, the stopgap, the bridge. And then after that, who knows? If Trey Lance comes in and he gets 2 weeks or 3 weeks to show himself and he does amazing, then we can talk. Then there might be a little murkiness because then if you're Trey and they go back to Brock and they pull you, then you can say, hey, look, I've showcased myself. Now I want you to trade me, which, like you were saying, where if Trey goes up to the team and he expresses that desire to, look, man, let me flourish, let me be traded, I think they'll allow that. Like you said, with Jeff Wilson, that was a beautiful example of he did so good. He knew that maybe in the offseason, if he would have asked for a trade, he wouldn't have really got to a good opportunity. He wanted to still put the work in, team guy, and they gave him the opportunity to go somewhere where he would flourish. Miami, great place for him with, Mike McDaniel. So it worked out for both of them. And they get a draft pick out of him. So I think Trey right now, he honestly just wants to prove himself to these guys. These guys drafted him. And he loves the players on this team. Like this is what he knows in the NFL. And I think he's okay with it. And he's going to take his opportunity, and it's sink or swim for Trey, right? It's sink or swim. He knows it. He knows it. Like he said, he wants to compete. He's okay with Brock. They're cool guys together. And again, if Brock Purdy, if he has a setback, or if he's not looking like Brock Purdy last year that was undefeated through the season, then yeah, they got a backup plan. And even Sam Darnold. So I think a lot of people are getting stressed out because there's an unknown. But to me, I really don't think it's an unknown. It's Brock Purdy's our quarterback 1, unless he has a setback. If there's a setback, now we need to figure out who that QB2 is. So I still think they're still jockeying for position. It just really depends on if Brock Purdy can become healthy. But now, later in the season, it might get murky, like you said. So if I'm the 49ers, just like you said, Larry, I would hold on to Trey because I don't know what his value is unless someone throws me an offer that I'm like, wow, I don't think I'd ever be able to get this later. I think the Montez Sweat would be a beautiful package. Then go ahead and take that because then you'd have a defense that nobody's stopping. Otherwise, you keep them and you hope for the best for Brock. And if not, you got a quarterback that may be able to, live up to that potential that you had saw. And then you got Sam Darnold, who I think he can manage this team well. So, but the biggest wrench through it all would be if Allen plays better than everybody, but I don't see that one happening.
Well, I'll say this though, he's had a couple flat dimes in practice. I mean, where he's just been incredible. Maybe in some ways the best thing that could happen is all their quarterbacks play well in the preseason. Some quarterback around the league goes down, and they have somebody bidding on maybe on any of those guys, Darnold, Allen, or Trey. Yeah. And I could see the 49ers making a move and moving a quarterback to somebody, especially if, some quarterback shines in the preseason and they still want to go with Brock Purdy, and maybe Lance shines, or maybe Darnold shines. Maybe one of these guys really looks good and a quarterback goes down, and maybe somebody's willing to offer you a day 2 pick to move off one of your quarterbacks. I mean, Niners Nation did a whole article saying it was by Patrick Holloway, said which 49er backup quarterback would you trade? Well, I mean, they just signed Sam Darnold. I mean, he just signed a 1-year deal for $11.5 million. So I think almost by definition, he's probably not going anywhere, but you never know.